Let me tell you a story about Tanyards.
Tanyards. Called it Tanyards.
Well, that's Kentucky.
Tanyards.
Virginia's Tanyards. When I got Mr. Bill to record for me, I'd gone to Nashville and I had a fiddle player lay down on me. The first day I showed up, I had David Greer and Mike Compton there in the studio and had a bass player, but the fiddle player that I'd hired, in trying to locate him about 4 o'clock, my buddy Richard Bailey, a banjo player, told me that the fiddle player had been over Brown's Diner all day drunk when he was supposed to be doing my sessions. So I go out to Mr. Bill's house the next day, and my deal was him back in them days was I'd call him up and ask him if he had a cup of coffee out there, and if he did, I'd stop off at the Kroger out in the Goodlettsville Pike out there and get him a dozen donuts and go out there and watch him eat about half those donuts and drink 15, 20 cups of, or spoonfuls of sugar and then 2 cups of coffee that he had. And about that time he'd get a sugar blast and then go outside and start picking. No, Tanyards. So I'm out there that morning and I'm saying, Mr. Bill, I wish you'd come to the studio and help me out. And it was on a Thursday. And I said, I wish you'd come to the studio and help me out. I said, I had a fiddle player lay down on me last night or yesterday, and I really need some help out there. And he just looked around, and Julie LaBella was looking after him then. He looked around and he said, well, Julia, what am I doing this evening? And she said, nothing that I know of. And he said, well, I might try to make it out there. So I left Julia the address where the place was. When I got over at the studio at 12 o'clock, I'm an hour early, Bill was sitting in the parking lot. And I walked in, and no boy named Kurt Story, he wound up being Victor Wooten of Bela Fleck. He works a lot with Bela and Victor and those guys. He's Victor's engineer. He was the engineer for that recording, and I went inside and I said, Kurt, I think we got Bill Monroe out there in the parking lot. I said, well, get him in here, let's play. And we got him in. I set Mike Compton down about 3 feet in front of him. By that time, Mr. Monroe, his attention span would last for about 2 or 3 hours, and then he'd start to drift on you a little bit. But on some of those tunes, he couldn't remember the tunes, like Tanyards is one, and some of the others. But we cut about half that record that were original tunes of his that hadn't been recorded at that point. The Golden West, that was the only time I reckon he ever recorded My Father's Footsteps was on that. I got him doing it on that, and Sam Bush doing it on my Fifth Child record, so you can contrast those two guys if you ever have want to do that. But anyhow, he comes in and plays on the record that day and everything, and I was just absolutely overwhelmed by it. I don't think I slept a couple hours that night. And I got up the next morning, I'm sitting there making some notes on what I was going to do because the studio had been booked that day. And my phone rings about 7:30 in the morning on the other end of the phone. Boy, that recording you all done out there sounded real good yesterday. I said, yes, sir, Mr. Bill, how you doing this morning? He said, you reckon you're going to be doing some more of that today? That sounded awful good. Well, it'd sure be good to get them boys out. I said, well, what in the world you got on your mind? You don't reckon you'd come out again today, do you? And he said, well, that sounded real good to me yesterday, and what you got may make you a good record. And I said, well, give me just a minute. I said, I'll be calling you back in 5 minutes. And I called up Kurt Story. I said, Kurt, where in the hell are we going to find the studio? You're booked. And he said, call Vic Gabaney. So I called Vic Gabaney, and Vic was doing a vocational class down at Hillsborough High School. So we used their studios there at the high school to do this. I got him to come back out and get him a second night. And I mean, I was just flabbergasted and overwhelmed and everything. So make this record, he's recorded on about half the record with me at this point. It's a work in process. It took me longer to make that record than it did any other one I did. But I got home and I called up Doug Hutchins. And I said, Doug, I got him. He said, what do you mean you got him? I said, I got Bill Monroe on a record. And Doug said, did you get Tanyards?
Did you get what?
Tanyards, the tune that Danny's talking about. And that was one of the ones that had come in at either the end of the first or the second day. And Mr. Bill had about 50% of it there that he had done. The rest of it, most of what you hear on my recording is Mike Compton. I just bled the two in and out when I mixed it, and I cleaned it up for that to get that way.
I can't remember how Tanyard goes.
Just like that. isn't it? That's in a major right there. That's in it right there. But I did that.
It's a haunting
And
tune.
I asked Doug, I said, why are you so concerned about that tune? And he said, he wrote that with your daddy in the back of Bean Blossom Barn. Now, if you guys have ever been down to the IBMM Museum in Owensboro, and you go in the bluegrass, or the back there where they've got the Bill Monroe room, and one mural on the wall there has got Bill sitting on a bale of hay in the back of the old barn over here playing. That fella sitting right in front of him with the bald spot in the back of his head's my daddy. Sitting there playing with him. See, that's the way Bill used to do these guys. These cats like my dad and some of them that would come up here to work for him. He would, you know, give them admission to get in, but I don't think my dad, he may have taken money from him. I don't remember him doing that. I mean, my dad just came up here and did what he did because he loved to be at this place and he loved Bill Monroe. But when Doug told me that, I must have spent $2,000 on putting that one tune together to make sure that tune would go on the record. I must have burned $2,000 in studio time putting that back together. But when Doug told me that, I had to have it.